Coming up on Arirang News, causing delays to surgeries and other procedures. Hundreds of junior doctors at major hospitals in South Korea today left their places of work, protesting against the government's plan to boost medical school admissions quotas. President Yoon warns not to take people's lives hostage. A bereaved family of a Korean victim of Japanese wartime forced labor has received compensation from a Japanese company deposited at court in accordance with the Supreme Court ruling, making it the first such case. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has been gifted a Russian vehicle by President Vladimir Putin in what the North says a sign of their close friendship. But pundits say it could contravene UN Security Council resolutions. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. Medical disruption looms large in the nation as hundreds of junior doctors at major hospitals in South Korea today left their places of work to protest the government's medical reform. Our Song Yoo-jin leads us off.
It was the first day of the nationwide doctor strike in Korea against the government's plan to increase the medical school quota. According to the Health Ministry, as of 11 p.m. Monday, 6,415, more than half of the country's trainee doctors, which refer to interns and residents, submitted their resignation letters, though none have been accepted. About a quarter of them, over 1,600, have stopped working and left their place of work. So this hospital, the Severance Hospital in Sinchon-dong, is one of the two hospitals alongside the Seoul St. Mary Hospital that, according to the Health Ministry, has seen the largest number of trainee doctors walk out. This huge walkout is raising concerns over a disruption to medical services, as trainee doctors are at the core of physicians carrying out emergency duties. As of 6 p.m. Monday, 25 surgeries and 4 hospital appointment cancellations were reported to the government. But these numbers will likely rise. Severance Hospital is reportedly planning to halve the number of scheduled surgeries from Wednesday due to a lack of doctors. But as Tuesday was the first day of the strike, patients have yet to experience disruptions or inconvenience.
I haven't sensed much change, but the ongoing strike does concern me. It could be a bit inconvenient for patients, especially for people like me who have to carve out time while working to attend appointments.
If it ends within the next month, then I won't be affected, but other people will unfortunately be. So that is, of course, unfortunate.
To discuss what action to take next, the Korean Intern Resident Association held a 5-hour-long closed-door emergency meeting on Tuesday afternoon. The association says it will soon announce what's been decided. They likely discussed legal responses against the government, as it previously hinted at pressing charges against doctors who do not comply with its return-to-work orders. Addressing the negative public opinion is also expected to have been another key agenda item, as most of the general public is known to be in favor of expanding the med school quota. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
President Yoon warns those doctors not to take people's lives hostage. The government has ordered some of the trainee doctors in essential fields to get back to their posts. Our presidential office correspondent Kim Do-yeon has the latest.
As a tug-of-war continues between the South Korean government and the nation's doctors, President Yoon Suk-yeol hits back at the collective action and says it's his constitutional duty to stop the medical system from breaking down.
의료 현장의 주역인 전공의와 미래 의료의 주역인 의대생들이 국민의 생명과 건강을 볼모로 집단 행동을 해서는 안 됩니다. 국민의 생명과 안전을 지키는 일은 국가 안보, 치안과 함께 국가가 존립하는 이유이자 정부에게 주어진 가장 기본적인 헌법적 책무입니다.
The comments came on Tuesday as he opened a cabinet meeting with the government exercising its legal authority to order those who resigned to go back to work. As of the latest briefing on Tuesday morning, a total of 831 trainee doctors have received such orders. If they decide to not comply, their licenses could be suspended. To relieve the current shortages of residences and major hospitals, compensation will be increased for emergency medical service personnel at regional and specialized emergency medical centers, as well as for emergency medical specialists doing consultations. Additionally, a hospitalized patient emergency care policy support fund will be established to provide additional compensation to specialists who treat hospitalized patients in the place of the absent residents. Anyone who has been affected by the current situation can call 129 and receive help from the government, including legal action. In addition, the government is easing up the entry process to 12 military hospital emergency rooms for civilians. In the meantime, President Yoon has also re-emphasized that the goal to extend the medical school enrollment quota by 2,000 was a must and actually the minimum, despite some claims that it's way too high.
대한민국 의료 역량은 세계 최고입니다. 그러나 환자와 국민들이 지역에서 마주하는 의료 서비스의 현실은 너무나 실망스럽고 어떻게 보면 비참하기 짝이 없습니다. 의료인 여러분, 더 이상 늦출 수 없는 의료 개혁에 동참해 주시기를 부탁드립니다.
The president also reminded the doctors that he's not only trying to raise the number of doctors, but to justly compensate for essential healthcare in rural areas and severe case treatments, while he will take the responsibility for creating an environment where doctors can practice medicine with conviction by reducing legal risks. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
President Yoon Suk-yeol on the phone on Tuesday asked his German counterpart, Frank-Walter Steinmeier, for understanding in postponing the planned visit to Berlin. Yoon says it was unavoidable due to the focus on domestic livelihood issues here in the country. According to the top office, Steinmeier said he understands the situation and wishes that the two countries can work out a new date soon. This comes as Yoon was supposed to be in Germany and Denmark this week, but the trip was canceled 4 days before the planned departure date. The two countries issued a joint cybersecurity advisory on Monday, which cautions that North Korea is intensifying its use of cyber espionage. The two leaders assessed the advisory and agreed to further strengthen cooperation in various sectors. Seoul plans to host the third Summit for Democracy next month, continuing the online meeting of world leaders on how to strengthen democratic values and institutions across their borders. South Korea's presidential office said Tuesday that the government will hold the three-day meeting this year from March 18th to 20th. Under the theme, Democracy for the Future Generation, the summit will feature a ministerial meeting and a roundtable of experts, along with various discussions and workshops. The Summit for Democracy was first launched by United States President Joe Biden in 2021 in order to renew democracy in the U.S. and confront autocracies abroad. The second round last year was co-hosted by South Korea, the U.S., Costa Rica, the Netherlands, and the Republic of Zambia. A bereaved family of a Korean victim of wartime forced labor has received a Japanese company's court deposit money as compensation. It's the first time that such a victim has been able to accept payment from an accused Japanese firm. Our foreign affairs correspondent Bae Eun-ji reports.
Mr. Lee, who was forced to work at Hitachi Zosen during Japan's colonial rule of Korea, filed a suit against the Japanese company in November 2014. Last December, South Korea's Supreme Court upheld the lower court's ruling and ordered the company to pay him 50 million Korean won in damages, on top of the delayed interest. But Mr. Lee passed away before the top court finalized its ruling. Then on Tuesday, his family finally received compensation from Hitachi Zosen, making it the first time that a forced labor victim has received compensation from a Japanese company. The family withdrew 60 million Korean won, or about $45,000 from the Seoul Central District Court, which was earlier deposited by Hitachi Zosen as a kind of collateral. A number of South Korean forced labor victims have won suits against Japanese companies, but they have not been able to receive payment directly from Japanese firms, as Tokyo continues to claim all issues had already been settled in a 1965 treaty. To resolve the matter and improve bilateral relations with Tokyo, last March, the Yoon administration unveiled a plan to compensate these victims using funds procured through a public foundation instead. Seoul's foreign ministry said Tuesday that this policy will remain in place, while adding that the victim was able to receive deposit money from Hitachi Zosen in accordance with relevant laws.
Our government's stance remains that we intend to pay the damages and delayed interest to the plaintiffs through the Foundation for Victims of Forced Mobilization by Imperial Japan.
Hundreds of thousands of Koreans were forced into labor in factories and mines in Japan before and during World War II. The historical issue remains one of the biggest obstacles in improving relations with Tokyo. 배은지, Arirang News.
In other news, household debt in South Korea has reached new heights amid continued high borrowing rates. According to the Bank of Korea on Tuesday, household debt rose by 8 trillion Korean won, or nearly $6 million in the final quarter of last year compared to the previous quarter. This is the highest sum on record and comes with a sharp increase in mortgages despite high interest rates and credit card spending toward the end of the year. A spokesperson from the bank said that more people took out mortgages during the period because that's when the supply of housing was concentrated in the capital, Seoul. The rival parties at South Korea's National Assembly each announced today new election pledges to better protect those in need. The ruling People Power Party said that when it comes to preventing vicious crimes, it's pushing for life imprisonment without parole. It would also work to restrict sentence reduction for crimes targeting the socially vulnerable, such as stalking and domestic violence. Meanwhile, the main opposition Democratic Party is pushing for a nationwide system where the state would provide child support to a custodial parent when a non-custodial parent does not carry out his or her duty to do so. The state would then collect the cost from the parent who owes the money. These announcements come with just 50 days left to go until the general election. Russian President Vladimir Putin has recently presented North Korea's leader with a Russian vehicle. Pundits say the gift may represent a deepening of Moscow-Pyongyang relations that could also contravene UN Security Council resolutions. Our North Korean affairs correspondent Kim Jong-un reports.
Is an old tradition back? Just like Joseph Stalin, who presented Kim Il-sung with a limousine back in 1948, Russian President Vladimir Putin presented North Korean leader Kim Jong-un with a car on Sunday. This is according to North Korea's official Rodong Sinmun newspaper on Tuesday. Kim Yo-jong, Kim Jong-un's younger sister, who practically acts as a de facto spokesperson for him, said the car was a clear indication of the close friendship between the two leaders. The gift isn't a total surprise considering Kim Jong-un showed interest in Putin's car back in September when he visited Russia's Far East. There, he joined the Russian president in the back of Putin's Auto Senate, a massive 7-ton armored limo. Few details were given by Pyongyang about the car except that it was Russian-made, but the Kremlin later confirmed on Tuesday that the car was made by Russian luxury car brand Autos. For leaders around the world, a car is linked directly to their safety. Back in 2018, then U.S. President Donald Trump also showed his presidential Cadillac, nicknamed the Beast, to the North's leader. With concerns rising on arms transfers between Pyongyang and Moscow, the luxury car gift may entail a much bigger concern, a Russian decision not to abide by UN Security Council resolutions on Pyongyang. UNSC resolutions ban member states from the direct or indirect supply, sale, or transfer of luxury goods to North Korea, including cars. A senior official at South Korea's Unification Ministry condemned North Korea on Tuesday for publicly announcing the gift while calling on Russia to realize its responsibility as a permanent member of the UN Security Council. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
The wife of Putin critic Alexei Navalny says Russian President Vladimir Putin is responsible for her husband's death. And that's a claim that U.S. President Joe Biden has echoed. Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
The widow of Russian opposition figure Alexei Navalny has accused Russian President Vladimir Putin of being responsible for the death of her husband, adding she will continue on with her husband's fight. In an 8-minute video posted on her late husband's social media platforms, Yulia Navalnaya on Monday said the Russian leader killed the father of her children and took away the most precious thing. She further accused Russian authorities of hiding Navalny's body in a move to disguise the cause of his death, adding that they're only waiting for traces of another of Putin's Novichok to disappear, referring to a nerve agent allegedly used by Russia's security service. The EU is now looking into fresh sanctions against Moscow over the death of Putin's critic. Germany, Lithuania, and Sweden were among EU nations calling for specific new penalties against Russia. The discussions came during a meeting of 27 EU foreign ministers scheduled before the death of Navalny, where EU's top diplomat Josep Borrell suggested that Russian prison officials linked to Navalny's death could be added to the list of those subject to asset freezes and travel ban. U.S. President Joe Biden also hinted at new sanctions, while also directly blaming Putin for the death of Navalny.
But the fact of the matter is, Putin is responsible. Whether he ordered it or not, he is responsible for the circumstance to put that man in. And he is a reflection of who he is. And it just cannot be tolerated. I said there would be a price to pay.
Meanwhile, Russia says an investigation into the death of Navalny is underway, adding that all due actions are being taken. The Kremlin added that any accusation against its president is both rude and gross, as there is no information on the cause of death. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Also on the international front, the U.S. has shared its own UNSC draft resolution for a temporary ceasefire of the Israel-Hamas war to address violence in Gaza. Yoon has more.
On Monday, the United States circulated a proposed UN Security Council resolution that supports a temporary ceasefire in Gaza. The resolution states a temporary ceasefire would be based on the formula of all hostages being released, while also lifting all barriers to provide humanitarian assistance at scale in the Gaza Strip. The draft also warns Israel not to launch a ground offensive in Rafah, stressing that such major military action should not proceed under the current circumstances. This is the second time since October 7th that Washington has proposed a Security Council resolution on Gaza. The first proposal in late October was vetoed by Russia and China. The latest draft comes more than 2 weeks after an initial draft was put forward by Algeria, the current non-permanent Arab member of the Security Council, which demanded an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. That draft resolution was set to be put up for a vote on Tuesday, but U.S. Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield signaled it would be vetoed, saying it would jeopardize any negotiation talks to broker a pause in the war and the release of hostages held by Hamas. The U.S. proposal may fall short of the international call for an immediate ceasefire, but the significance stands in Washington's use of the word ceasefire, which Israel is against. While the U.S. has been ready to protect Israel, the latest change in Washington's wording signals a warning shot to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. International Crisis Group UN Director Richard Gowan also said Israel would now be more concerned by the text Washington drafted, and that it is the strongest signal the U.S. has sent at the UN so far that Israel cannot rely on American diplomatic protection indefinitely. For a resolution to pass, it needs at least 9 votes in favor and no vetoes by the permanent members, the U.S., France, the UK, Russia, or China. It is not immediately clear when or if the U.S. draft resolution would be put to a vote. Ian-jin, Arirang News.
The Israel-Hamas war is more than just a tragedy for children. So far, thousands of them in Gaza have reportedly lost their lives. Our Yoon spoke to an official at a charity organization for children in the occupied Palestinian territory about what the situation is like there.
Since October 7th, over 29,000 people have died in Gaza, and more than 40% of them are children. Jason Lee, Save the Children's country director for the occupied Palestinian territory, says that a ceasefire is the only way to prevent more children from dying.
And again, it's so important because children need to believe that they have a future, that they will survive tomorrow, they'll have a future, rebuild the health facilities, rebuild the schools, rebuild the homes. But the first step is really the ceasefire.
There's also the impact on their mental health.
They see that their homes are being destroyed. They see their families being killed, their communities destroyed. They hear the fighting, they hear the airstrikes, the machine guns, the shelling, the tanks.
He shared the story of a 4-year-old girl whom he met in Gaza in December last year.
We have no idea who she is, how she got there, or where she came from. And she was in such a state of catatonic shock. She wasn't speaking, cold and clammy, really, and we had no idea when she last ate.
He says this is just one story of at least 17,000 children who are estimated to have lost their family. While they have no one to take care of them, humanitarian aid entering the Strip is becoming even more challenging. Rafah is congested with displaced people living out in the open, and access to other regions is not allowed by the Israeli Defense Forces.
Again, we have not been able to get to the north of Gaza. We've not been able to distribute to the middle areas of Gaza. And moving in Rafah is becoming more difficult because it's the congestion. I mean, none of the roads are passable right now. The trucks can't get through. We can't deliver enough supplies, and the people are desperate.
Israel's full-scale ground operation in Rafah means the children will be either killed immediately by the fighting or die from starvation or as a result of public health emergencies.
We already see diarrheal diseases increasing. It's cold, it's wet, they will get pneumonia. And what happens if there's cholera? So all of this will happen to civilians. We will see the morbidity and mortality, especially for children, increase.
70% of injuries have been either a woman or a child. Children are more susceptible to malnutrition and diseases and will die quicker. The lives of Gaza's 1.1 million children depend on an immediate and definitive ceasefire. Yoon, Arirang News.
On the cultural front, if you're curious about the taste of K-pop, you could consider trying the latest limited edition Coca-Cola. The company on Tuesday unveiled the Coca-Cola Zero Sugar K-Wave at a launch event in Seoul, drawing inspiration from K-pop stars and their dedicated fans. The beverage giant says the drink's fruity flavor will help consumers relive what it calls the excitement they felt when they first became a K-pop fan. This special edition will also showcase the brand's logo in Korean at the center of the can. It'll be available in 36 countries until June 2nd, including Korea, Japan, France, and Singapore.
The weather got chillier overnight as a cold wind strengthened. Sporadic rain is falling everywhere in these chilly conditions. With a heavy snow warning issued in Yeongdong, Gangwon-do province, the snow is gradually getting stronger, as well as in the northeastern mountainous areas of Gyeongsang-buk-do province. It's expected that there will be a snow bomb in this area by tomorrow. There will be more than 50 centimeters of heavy snow in the mountainous areas of Gangwon-do province and up to 30 in the mountainous areas of northeast Gyeongsang-buk-do province. Also, a lot of snow is expected in the central region, including the Seoul metropolitan area. Tomorrow, Seoul will start off at 3 degrees Celsius, Gwangju and Busan 8 degrees Celsius. As for the daily highs, Seoul and Chuncheon will get up to 4 degrees, Daegu 7 degrees. After the rain and snow stop, the morning temperatures will drop to below zero is expected to come around later this week. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Well, that is all for this newscast. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 10 p.m. with the AI headline news. Good night.